Hello everyone, this is Jake from CINECALIBER. In today's video, I will be reviewing the season finale for the new Disney Plus Star Wars show, The Acolyte. Now guys, this will be my 7th review on this TV series, and like I just said, it'll be the season finale of the TV show. If anyone wants to catch up on my reviews for the show, there will be links in the description of this video for those, and that'll be for episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But yeah, we're gonna get into it here, guys. I will say this actually was probably the best episode of the season, but ultimately, it still missed its mark as a whole television show. I will say though, there is one thing I did want to kind of retract from an earlier review that kind of goes in a different way in this episode. I had recently talked about Coyote Moody, I think in episode 4, and I was kind of like going off about how it didn't make sense that he was in this show. But now seeing how the show concluded, I kind of retract that basically, and it's fine that he is in this show because ultimately, the Jedi really don't know that the Sith have returned ultimately. So, but yeah, I don't want to get into too much of that before explaining it, but I do want to retract what I had said in an earlier review in regards to that. I had jumped the gun a little bit there, and that was my goof. I should have waited to see how the rest of the show played out. But ultimately, though, guys, there was still a lot in this show that I really just didn't like. But yeah, let me kind of get into it here. First, I'm going to recap episode 6 of this show. So basically, episode 7 was a flashback of episode 3. And the only thing we really learned from episode 7 was that the Jedi Master Soul had killed May and Asha's parents, and it was pretty much a filler episode for the most part. But basically, what had happened in episode 6 that ties into this episode, the Sith Lord Khmer had kidnapped Asha in the hopes that she would join him as his Sith apprentice, which she at first was hesitant throughout the episode, but then seemed to be curious towards the end of the power he speaks of, especially when she wears the Cortosis helmet that he talks about in that episode. At the same time, we had her sister May, who had switched spots with Asha in episode 5, was pretending to be Asha for some unknown reason. But during this whole thing, Jedi Master Soul eventually learned that it was May, and then he had her restrained basically to then tell her something which we can only imagine. He kind of just told her like he killed their mother. But funnily enough, it doesn't really make much sense, being that May had witnessed him doing it firsthand, so why would he have had to have told her that? Yeah, I don't know, guys. Like I said, a lot of inconsistencies in this show, unfortunately. And then during all this, too, the Jedi Council was attempting to find answers to what happened to their fallen Jedi comrades on the planet Kofor, with Jedi Master Valnestra basically leading the charge on that. And that's really all the recap I have for that. We're going to get into now what was a hit with this show, The Good. As I've said in pretty much every review so far for this TV show, the aesthetics of the show are solid. The costume design and the cinematography are pretty on point in this show. It definitely has that Star Wars feel to it. This episode does have yet another epic lightsaber fight sequence between Jedi Master Soul and Sith Lord Khmer. I recently actually just found out, it's a fun fact for you guys, that the choreographers from Rogue One that did the Darth Vader fight sequence are the ones that did the choreography for the fights here. I really hope that Disney locks those people down for future projects because they have done a phenomenal job so far. Basically, to me, these were the best fight sequences, lightsaber-wise, since the prequels, in my opinion. They really, really could do well with having these people return in future projects. We just have to see if that happens in the future. I did like too in this episode that we kind of touch upon some deep lore that's been kind of sprinkled throughout the show. And this one particularly, there's a scene where Soul's lightsaber bleeds red from Asha, and that is a great reference to one of Vader's comics where he has to basically prove he is evil. And in that comic, he goes on a quest to hunt a certain Jedi to then take his lightsaber and make it bleed red to show his truth Sith, allegiance for the most part. Very, very great comic reference there. For those of you who are wondering, how does that make sense? Because when Anakin turned to the dark side in Revenge of the Sith, you're probably wondering why did his lightsaber not turn red? And that was because it was his own established lightsaber at the time as a Jedi, and the reason why he needs to hunt down another is to basically make the saber bleed red with his dark act of murder. But basically, Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, he was still conflicted with himself, even though he was basically going towards the dark side. He still had that he love for Padme that was basically keeping him in the light. So that is why his lightsaber did not turn red in Revenge of the Sith. Like I said, the comic for Vader does a really good job explaining everything, and I'm really glad that they again had a little bit of deep lore in this episode. It shows that the writers do have the talent to, talk about the deep lore, and when they do want to touch upon it. So, yeah, another big thing I liked in this episode were the performances of Lee Jung-jae and Manny Jacinto. They continue to be compelling. You have Lee Jung-jae playing Jedi Master Soul, and then you also have Manny Jacinto playing Sith Lord Khmer, which is why really their fight sequence works so well, because you can really truly feel the emotion between the two during this battle. I thought, their performances continue to be great. They've been great throughout the whole show. And finally, guys, the last thing I really liked in this episode was the reveal of Darth Plagueis. It was very exciting. I have been dying to see him in live action at some point. And if the show does get renewed for another season, I really hope to see more of him. I think that they could do so much with that character. It's very exciting to see, him kind of make his on-screen debut. But that was everything for me, guys. That was a hit. Now we're going to get into what was a miss, the bad. I'm trying to think where to start here. This show's been plagued in every episode, guys, just by bad writing, poor characterization, and just a lack of consistency with Star Wars lore, and just, like I said, bad writing really is the ultimate bad end goal here. For example, you have characters, Ash and May, they continue to just be unbearable characters. And like at the end of this show, Asha basically, spoilers, becomes the Acolyte, and May is basically left to go on with her life. So they basically, it was, it would have been a cool twist to show that, like, hey, Asha was good in the beginning and May was bad, and they kind of flipped. But the way the writing was, it just made us did not care about these characters at all. There's a fight sequence that happens in this episode between the two, and it was just so uninteresting. And it took place during the good fight scene between Jedi Master Soul and Khmer, that it aggravated me even more than because we kept getting interrupted with their boring personal dilemmas with each other while we're trying to get a good fight scene. It just did not mesh very well. It did not flow very well. I've throughout this whole show, I just have no interest in these characters, and they are the main characters, which is sad to say. Another part with Asha, like I said, like spoilers here. Asha ends up killing Jedi Master Soul for revealing that he killed their mother, and then and her coven. But then later, tells Khmer that they can just surrender to the Jedi and explain what Saul did. Like, you're bad. You just literally killed their Jedi brother. You really think that they're going to just, forgive you and just, let you surrender peacefully. Which is it? Are you good or you bad? It's one of those, again, poor character choices. I felt too much flipping back and forth of intentions. It just felt so out of place. They really the inconsistency of these character choices are just a bit mind-boggling here, guys. And also too, in the same scene, I mean, Kamir basically, when Asha says to surrender to the Jedi, he basically tells her no, and she ultimately agrees to, be becoming his apprentice to spare her sister. She then goes and hugs May goodbye while he looks on. I mean, come on. For Kumir, right? If he was a true Sith, he wouldn't have allowed such emotional moments to even occur, as the Sith's main goal has always been to separate their apprentices, loved ones, and fear that their emotional attachment would deter their Sith training. But here he is, he's like, sure, go ahead, hug it out. It's just a complete ignorance for how the Sith operate, again, from the inconsistent writing. You know, they sprinkle in some good things, but here we are with another bit of inconsistent writing, making the character just seem, stupid, ultimately. And then the writing for Soul, guys, I mean, just seems to go all their way. He at first was about to expose the Sith, but then goes rogue to bring Osh and May back to Brendok to reveal his secrets. It just felt a little bit of a turn to go from his mission to then go about revealing his secrets. And then this was only realized after he after he realized that May I'm sorry, after he realized that May had switched with Asha, he basically decided to go about this whole mission. So what was the point of him going rogue before that? Like, again, the consistency again really destroys the storyline here. I just, I like Soul in the beginning. I thought he was going somewhere cool, but then when he decides to go off and do his own thing, it just didn't, it felt like really a weird turn of events. It felt a bit unearned. So and then also, guys, just the handling of Jedi Master Vernestra's storyline was also a bit unnerving. Basically, in this episode, it's revealed that Vernestra used to be Kamir's Jedi Master, and this is revealed towards the end of the episode. So she knows that Kamir has gone bad, and most likely is involved with this whole investigation. But then it goes in front of the Senate to blame it all on Jedi Master Saul, which, I mean, it does explain, again, why the Jedi have no knowledge of the Sith until Phantom Menace, but her actions make no sense. But maybe they will explore her actions in a future season, again, if the show does get renewed for another season. But as it stands, I'm not seeing what her goal is here. But again, we'll have to see if we will actually see if they're going to explore that. So, and then really, guys, I mean, as much as I liked the reveal of Darth Plagueis, it's both a good and a bad thing. It was good because we finally got to see him in live action, but it's bad because it just shows that there is so much going on in the background of this story that seems much more interesting, yet they give us such a shitty story about two girls that we could care less about, and then go into a murder mystery that leads to absolutely nothing except that, hey, Asha becomes the Acolyte, which, if you really know the story of Darth Plagueis, then you know he ultimately takes Sidious as his apprentice, which basically means Asha and Kamir at the end of the day will be irrelevant. So then the ultimate question remains, will their stories really mean anything? And to me, they don't, which adds that this whole storyline and these characters are all a complete waste of time. Like, there is so much, like, that whole reveal really just, there's a lot the writers are gonna have to really explain here and course correct if they want to make this make any sort of sense. So, if it gets renewed, I will give them that opportunity. But as of now, I am not seeing anything that they're doing here be of any sort of relevance. I'm sorry. I've lost all hope in this show, ultimately. And I'm going to get into the conclusion here, guys. Basically, as I've been saying, I mean, this was arguably the worst Star Wars project to date, and that is saying a lot. Despite its efforts to give us some great aesthetics and also to give us some good fight sequences we've all craved for since the prequels, this show is plagued by poor storytelling, inconsistent character arcs, and just poor dialogue. It seems that there is a story here behind scenes behind scenes that seem much more interesting. But the story they give us was complete trash and feels just completely irrelevant. For a show that was supposed to explore the Sith, it truly misses its mark. And if this show somehow gets renewed for a second season, the writing has to improve and course correct a lot of what's been established. But that remains to be seen if that's ever gonna happen. But with all that said, guys, I have to give this episode a rating a 2.5 out of 5. It actually was probably the strongest episode of this season, but it was not enough to save the show. And with all that said, being that this is the season finale, I would have to give this entire show a 1.5 out of 5. I disliked it that much. Definitely down there with like the Rise of Skywalker. I didn't think that Disney could stoop any lower, but unfortunately they have. Um, we have the Skeleton Crew coming out next at the end of this year. We have to see if that, gets any better. But I'm getting very worried about the continuation of Star Wars being a consistent franchise at this point in time. But honestly, guys, I will say if you don't know Legends lore, or if you're not a, long if you're not a true Star Wars fan and you haven't been following it for most of your life, you might like this show. To be fair, I the show can redeem itself, but it has to do a lot to be able to do that. Um, but definitely one of the most disappointed shows of the year for me. And yeah, that's all I really had for today, guys, and that's all I had for this show. Um, as always, you guys can comment, like, and subscribe to the channel, and please let me know your thoughts. And this is Jake from CINECALIBER.